Hello everyone. Earlier we have discussed about the effect of temperature or we can say heat on the solids. So we already have discussed that whenever a solid substance is heated, the change in its dimensions takes place. Either it may change the length or the surface area or the volume of the substance. So these all things we have discussed on the last day. Now we will discuss about the effect of temperature on density. What happens when we heat a substance? So what happens on the density of the substance? So density of a substance, we already know it is the mass in 1 unit volume of the substance. How much mass is there in every 1 unit of volume? Okay. So to begin with, to check the effect of temperature on density, we start with this expression for the volume. So suppose that given volume of the substance is heated and its temperature changes by delta theta, and then its new volume V, it will be given by V naught into, or we can say delta V, it is equal to V naught into 1 plus gamma delta theta. So this is the new volume whenever temperature change of delta theta takes place in a substance which earlier have volume V naught, and gamma is the constant called as coefficient of cubic expansion for the given substance. Okay. So from here we can substitute for volume, and volume comes out to be mass per unit density. So this is the final volume, because mass is not changing, only the volume is changing, and according to that its density is changing. So this is the final volume. So it will be mass of the substance per unit final density, let it be called as rho 2, and this is equal to V naught. V naught is the initial volume of the substance before its temperature is changed. So it will be equal to mass, which is same, per unit density at the initial stage, which is rho 1 for example, and inside it is 1 plus gamma delta theta. So mass just cancels out on both sides, this just cancels out, we are left with only 1 upon rho 2, this is equal to 1 upon rho 1 into 1 plus gamma delta theta. So from here we take gamma 1 to the left side and rho 1 to the left side and rho to the other side. So it becomes rho 1, this is equal to rho 2 into 1 plus gamma delta theta. So we have to find out the final density after change in temperature is taking place. So from here rho 2 becomes equal to, this term inside the bracket goes to the other side. So it becomes rho 1 into 1 plus gamma delta theta to the power minus 1. Now we apply the binomial theorem over this term inside the bracket, which we can apply here, and in that we get the higher order terms of the gamma, which is a very small quantity for the given material. So the higher order terms containing the squares or cubes or fourth power and so on, these terms are ignored because their contribution will be rather small. So we will be left with the final density rho, let us call it simply rho, this is equal to rho 1 means the initial density, let us call it rho naught, and inside the bracket we will be left with only, we are considering the terms only up to the first order. So it will be 1 minus gamma delta theta. So this is the expression which tells us about how the density of the substance will get affected with the change in the temperature. So from this expression it is clear that as the temperature change increases, or we can say as the temperature of the substance increases, the density of the substance goes on decreasing because its volume keep on increasing. Now the same volume of the same mass of the substance is occupying a larger volume, so therefore the density of the substance will decrease with increase in the volume. So this remains the direct relationship between the density and the temperature change. This understanding of the density also let us understand or discuss the anomalous, or we can say different behavior of water. So what is the anomalous behavior of water? So what is anomalous in the behavior of the water, or what is the strange or different behavior in the water? Okay. So when we heat the water, from 0 Kelvin to 4 degree, or we can say 0 degree Celsius to higher temperatures, its volume decreases. Rather than increasing, its volume decreases, and it becomes minimum at 4 degree Celsius of temperature. And when we keep it heating beyond 4 degree Celsius, its volume starts increasing. So this is the behavior of the water, which is different from what is known by the general expression for the density. This expression simply says that the density after the temperature change equal to delta theta takes place. It will be 1 minus gamma delta theta. So the new density will be less because volume will increase. But in case of water, when water is heated from 0 to up to 4 degrees Celsius, its volume decreases, and hence its density increases. And beyond 4 degrees Celsius, whenever we keep it heating beyond 4 degrees Celsius, its volume starts increasing. So this relationship is followed by water after 4 degree Celsius. So this is the strange behavior of the water. So that means at 4 degrees Celsius, when volume of the water is minimum, its density is maximum. So this density is maximum than the density of the water at 0 degree Celsius. So this strange behavior of the water helps us understand how the aquatic life takes place in the winters, extreme winter regions. So what happens in extreme winter regions? The upper layer, it is at 0 degree Celsius. Upper layer of the water, it is at 0 degree Celsius. It is cooled at 0 degree Celsius. So according to the understanding of anomalous behavior of water, we see that at 0 degree Celsius, the volume of the water is comparatively high than the 4 degree Celsius. So its density at 0 degree Celsius, it will be less. So let us call it 0 degree and this will be 4 degree. So the density at 0 degree, it will be less than the density of the water at 4 degree Celsius. So a less dense water just rises up, and water which is at 4 degree Celsius, it remains below. It goes down. So the upper layer at 0 degree Celsius, it just freezes, and water below it is at 4 degree Celsius, which is the heavier one. So it remains in its liquid state, and hence the aquatic life of fish and water animals and the plants living in the water, it is possible. So this is about the anomalous behavior of the water. We can also understand the thermal expansion happening in case of solids on the basis of intermolecular potential energy. This is called as intermolecular theory. So thermal expansion on the basis of intermolecular potential energy. So what is the role of potential energy in there? So for any substance, we can draw the graph between the intermolecular spacing r and the potential energy, which depends upon the intermolecular spacing of the object. So the graph is found to be such that it is just like this. So at 0 Kelvin, this is the temperature at 0 Kelvin, the potential energy of the substance, or we can say the pair of molecules, between which we are taking the graph. So at 0 Kelvin, the potential energy of the any two molecules, it is minimum. We call it V0, for example. The minimum potential energy represent a more stable state, or we can call it to be the mean state, or we can say equilibrium state. So at this temperature of 0 Kelvin, when the potential energy of the molecules of a substance is minimum, the separation between the two molecules, it is called as R naught. It is called as the equilibrium separation. Now when we heat the substance to some higher temperature, for example T1 Kelvin, which is more than 0 Kelvin. Now this temperature will increase whenever we give the heat to the substance. Whenever we heat the substance, heat is a kind of energy. With that energy, the molecules of the substance, they start vibrating. So when they vibrate, they have some minimum separation and then they have the maximum separation. During the vibrations, the molecule come close together and they also move away from each other during the vibration. This happens when we give some amount of heat to the substance so that its temperature is raised to T1. Now this minimum separation, when during the oscillation or vibrations due to the kinetic energy gained by the molecules of the substance, these molecules come close to each other, but they cannot come close to each other beyond a certain limit, because as they come close to each other, their repulsive forces starts playing the role, or we can say starts acting, due to which the molecules are pulled apart, or we can say kept apart. On the other side, there is no such repulsive force whenever the molecules move away from each other, as the molecules keep on vibrating. So what we see here, that at high temperature T1, the molecules gain kinetic energy, and with that kinetic energy they start vibrating. So during vibrations, they have some maximum separation between them and they have some minimum separation between them. So this is the maximum separation and this is the minimum separation at temperature T1. So what is the average separation between the two molecules or any two molecules at high temperature T1? It will be the average of the minimum distance between the molecules and the maximum distance between the molecules. So the average of this minimum and maximum, it will come out somewhat here. So it represents that at high temperature T1, the average separation between the molecule has increased to R1, and this is because during the vibration, when the molecule come close to each other, they have the distance less than the mean distance. The repulsive forces starts dominating and do not allow the molecule to come close than a certain value. Whereas there is no such thing when the molecules move wide apart during the vibration motion, and therefore the average of the minimum and maximum separation between the molecules, it is more than R naught, the equilibrium separation, as before. So we see that at high temperatures, the average separation between the molecules increases. We can take another high temperature T2, for example. So T2 is a higher temperature than T1. So the average separation, or we can say the maximum separation, now increased to R2 max, for example, and the minimum separation at that situation, it is R2 minimum. So the average separation at high temperature T2, it is the average of the maximum separation at temperature T2 and minimum separation at temperature T2. So it will be somewhat here. So which is a higher separation as the R1 or the R naught. So we see that as the temperature increases, the average separation between the molecules also increases. This average increase in the average separation between the molecules is referred as the thermal expansion. of the substances. So we see here that because of the intermolecular separation happening at higher and higher temperatures, the thermal expansion of the solids takes place at the increase of the increase in the intermolecular separation. And because of that, the graph is not symmetric about this mean separation or not, because of the repulsive forces. So this is the thermal expansion on the basis of intermolecular theory or intermolecular potential energy. There are a lot of applications where the thermal expansion is desired and where the thermal expansion is not desired. Just as in case of railway tracks, the small gap is always left between the we can say rails of the railway tracks to avoid the accidents, because in summers, due to thermal expansion, the railway tracks, slippers of the railway tracks increases, or we can say their volume increases, or due to which their length is also increased. So with the increase, if there is no space which is left between the tracks, then it will be the it will just mismatch from its place, and which can cause the large damage to the we can say property as well as life. Similarly, bridges and roofs of houses made of steel girders are put on the rollers. So these are some applications. There are many more. You can have a look at them. Next thing we will try to understand, it is about thermal stress. So what is thermal stress? Suppose that we have this rod of some metal, and across its length it is fixed rigidly. Means the ends of this rod, metallic rod, are fixed rigidly to the walls, just like this. Now it simply means that the length of the rod cannot change. Now we start heating it and giving it some amount of heat. So we are heating it. So with that heat, what will happen? The expansion in the rod will take place, but because rod is not allowed to expand along its length, so it will start bending, right? It will start bending. So if by any means the rod is also not allowed to bend, then it means that this heating will keep the we can say rod under a stress called as thermal stress. So if L is the L naught, or simply L is the original length of the rod, whose coefficient of linear expansion is alpha, and suppose that we are creating a temperature change of delta theta in the rod. In that case, we already know that this change in the length or increase in the length, it is given by L times the original length times alpha delta theta. This thing we already know, and this delta L upon L, this is the ratio of the change in length per unit original length. This is nothing but the longitudinal strain, and it comes out to be here alpha delta theta. So this is longitudinal strain. Here the stress is thermal stress and the strain is longitudinal strain. So therefore we can write the expression for the Young's modulus, which is given by thermal stress per unit longitudinal strain, which is simply given by thermal stress is, or from here we can calculate the thermal stress. This comes out to be y into longitudinal strain. It goes to the other side, it just multiply the Young's modulus, and longitudinal strain is given by alpha delta theta. So this is the thermal stress under which this rod will be whenever it is not allowed to expand on either side. If A is the area of the cross section of the rod, then the force developed in the rod, it will be given by stress, which is thermal stress, multiplied by the total area. So this will be given by this thermal stress, it is given by Y alpha delta theta times A. Here alpha delta theta, it is the longitudinal strain. So we can write here delta L upon L. So therefore the total force which is developed due to the thermal stress, it is given by Y into A, and in place of alpha delta theta we are writing delta L upon L. So this is the general expression for the thermal stress is this, and this is the formula for the force under which the rod will be whenever it is heated. So these are some basic terms about this thermal expansion. Now we go to the next topic, which is thermal capacity, or it is also called as heat capacity. So what are these things to know? So whenever we heat a substance or a solid, its temperature increases. So whenever it is heated, its temperature increases. So heat capacity or thermal capacity, it is defined as the amount of heat required. Suppose that we are giving it amount of heat Q for given mass of the substance, and temperature change in it is taking place equal to delta theta. So therefore thermal capacity will measure the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of the substance by 1 degree. So amount of heat per unit increase in the temperature change temperature, it is called as thermal capacity of the substance. What is the amount of heat to required in order to increase the temperature of the substance by 1 degree, it is called as the thermal capacity of that substance. So from here the units for thermal capacity are nothing but Q, it is heat, so it has the units of joule, and in the denominator we have temperature, so the units are Celsius or Kelvin. So the units are either joule per degree Celsius or joule per Kelvin. So these are the units for the thermal capacity, and it is known that the thermal capacity, it depends on the mass of the substance. More is the mass, more will be the amount of the heat required to raise the temperature of the substance by 1 degree. It also depends upon the internal properties of the substance. It also depends upon the change in temperature which is taking place. So there will be the different factors which affect the thermal capacity of any substance. Also we can write the dimensions of the heat capacity from here. We write the dimensions for the heat, which is kind of energy, and in the denominator it is the temperature. So the dimensions are M L 2 T minus 2, and in the denominator it is per Kelvin. So these are the dimensions for the heat capacity. Another important term, it is the specific heat capacity. So what is specific heat capacity? Heat capacity, the total amount of heat required to raise the temperature of the given mass of the given substance by 1 degree Celsius. And heat capacity will be, suppose that we have m mass of the substance and we are giving it q amount of heat, due to which a temperature change of delta theta is taking place in it. Then specific heat capacity, which we represent it by small c, it will be given by the total amount of heat required or amount of heat required for raising the temperature of 1 unit mass of the substance. Now we are not raising the temperature of whole mass of the substance, but 1 unit mass of the substance. So the amount of heat required per unit mass of the substance per degree increase in the temperature. So this is called as the specific heat of the substance. So it is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of the substance of 1 unit. The temperature change required is 1 degree Celsius. So therefore amount of heat which will do all these things, it will be called as specific heat of that substance. if we take the mass to be 1 gram and we take the temperature change of 1 Kelvin or 1 degree Celsius, in that case, C, it will be equal to Q upon 1. In place of mass we have 1 gram, and in place of delta theta we have 1 Kelvin or 1 degree Celsius. So, specific heat capacity, it is the amount of heat which is required to raise the temperature of 1 unit mass of the substance or 1 gram mass of the substance by 1 Kelvin or 1 degree Celsius. So, this is how we understand and differentiate between the heat capacity and the specific heat capacity. Heat capacity is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of whole mass of the substance, whatever it is given, by 1 degree Celsius. Whereas specific heat is the heat required to raise the temperature only 1 gram of the mass of the substance by 1 degree. So, that is called as the specific heat. Again, you can write its units from here. It is joule per gram per degree Celsius or per Kelvin. And also the dimensions are m naught, L2, T minus 2, K minus 1. So, these are the dimensions for the specific heat capacity. M here becomes 0, whereas in case of thermal capacity it was m here. M becomes the dimension of m becomes 0 because it is divided by m, mass here. So, this is the basic understanding of the we can say thermal capacity or we can say heat capacity and the specific heat capacity. The change in the temperature also affect the specific heat capacity of a material. But in case of solids, the change in specific heat capacity due to the temperature is very, very small. So, therefore, we do not consider during the calculation the effect of temperature on the specific heats. Another important term, it is the molar specific heat capacity. So, what is molar specific heat capacity? So, when mass is in place of grams, it is taken in moles, we call it as the specific heat capacity. So, molar specific heat capacity. So, molar specific heat capacity, it is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of 1 mole of the substance by 1 degree, then that amount of heat it is called as molar specific heat. So, the formula is quite simple. The molar specific heat, the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of 1 mole of the substance. Suppose that we have mu number of moles. In some books it may be taken as n, and mu number of moles require q amount of heat to raise its temperature by delta theta. Then what amount of heat will be required to raise 1 mole of the substance for 1 degree increase in the temperature. So, that is called as molar specific heat, and to differentiate we represent it by capital C, right. Okay. Because mu, the number of moles, it will be equal to m, the mass of the material, divided by capital M, the molecular weight of the substance we are taking. So, when we substitute mu to be m upon m, what we get here? C takes the form, it becomes q upon small m upon capital M times delta theta. So, that m goes in the numerator. So, it becomes q upon m delta theta. So, we see that this molar specific heat, it becomes equal to m, molecular weight of the substance, multiplied by this term inside the bracket. It is nothing but the specific heat of the substance as in this formula. So, we simply write the small c here. So, in order to calculate the molar specific heat, we just multiply the specific heat of the substance by its molecular weight. So, that is the simple understanding of the molar specific heat of a system, or we can say a substance. And similarly, from this formula we can write the units for the molar specific heat. They are the joule per mole per degree Celsius or Kelvin. and as for the dimensions, they are the mL2T minus 2 per Kelvin per mole. So these are the dimensions for the molar specific heat. Calorimetry, this is the next term we will understand. Calorimetry, it is the study of the measurement of the heat. So simply when we measure the heat which is lost or gained by a substance, the branch of science or study of it, it is called as calorimetry, and the apparatus or device which we make use of in order to do that, it is called as calorimeter. So calorimetry, it defines a principle called as the principle of calorimetry. It simply says that whenever there is no source or sink of the heat, so principle of calorimetry, so whenever there is no loss, or we can say there is no source or sink, in that case the heat lost by one substance, it will be equal to the heat gained by the other substance. So how does this principle of calorimetry works? It helps in measurement of the specific heat of any substance. Okay, so how does it works? Suppose that we are taking a container filled with the water at some temperature, right, and we are interested in measuring the specific heat of some substance, for example of copper or aluminum or any other material. Then we take a piece of it and we heat it. So as its temperature is increased by the temperature difference of delta theta. Now we allow this piece of aluminum, copper or whatever material it is to move in the liquid, this water. So this water being at lower temperature and this substance, piece of the substance, or we can say specimen of the substance, it is at higher temperature. So this substance will lose the heat and water will gain the heat, due to which the temperature of this substance will decrease and the temperature of the water will increase. And if there is no any other factor of the heat exchange, or we can say a source or sink, then in case of the heat lost by this specimen, it will be equal to the heat gained by the water. So this is how it works. So the heat lost by system, we can call it to be system A and this is system B. Then the heat lost by system A, it is equal to its mass into its specific heat C1 into the temperature difference. Let it call it to be theta 1 minus theta. So this exchange of heat will continue till both of the two system A and B, metal and the water, will have the same temperature. And similarly the other system B, it will gain the heat which will be equal to this much. So numerically what will be its value? It will be mass of water, means system B, its specific heat and its temperature change, which takes place from its temperature theta 2 to theta, because the system initially was at theta 1 and system 2 was at theta 2. So this is how it both gain the same temperature theta after some time. So the heat lost by one system, it is equal to heat gained by the other system. So we make use of this formula and this principle of calorimetry in order to measure the specific heats of the substances. That's all for now. Thank you.